name is Nate Thompson. I am with MPTF. This is a residential area, so a lot of industry workers from all different kinds of crafts and fields live here. But we also have a great social services team who are there for all kinds of needs. When life sort of throws you a curveball that you're not expecting, they're there to step in and help out with financial aid and help with insurance and you name it. But right now they are just being truly heroic with all of the wildfire relief that's going on right now. So if you or anyone you know has been affected, please send them to our website or to mptf.com/wildfire relief because we have lots of options that are available for people who have been impacted. So. Now, without further ado, you're here to see Conclave, and nice little surprise, we actually have 3 gentlemen who are Oscar nominated for their work on this film. We have screenwriter Peter Straughan, editor Nick Emerson, and composer Volker Bertelmann.
Hi.
Hello.
So thank you so much for being here, and congratulations on this wonderful film and just the amazing reception it's gotten.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, obviously the first question has to be for you, because you've done many adaptations over the course of your career, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Wolf Hall, many others. How did you get attached to this project? And it's based on a wonderful book, and the way that you translate it into sort of a visual counterpart is really remarkable.
Thank you. I got sent the book by a producer who I worked with before, Tessa Ross, and I think she'd seen just a few chapters of it initially before it was published, and adoption did quite quickly. So I got sent it, and I read it in about a day. I really, really liked it. You know, Robert's a wonderful writer. So it's a book by Robert Harris. So he's a wonderful writer. It's very intelligent, very elegant, but very gripping. You know, it's a sort of gripping political thriller, which I wasn't expecting. And there were a couple of moments as I was reading that made me think, oh, okay. One was, these are tiny spoilers, but they're not big spoilers. there's a scene early on where one of the cardinals says about the Pope who's died. It's trending online. And it sort of made me laugh. It's sort of, and that was the seed of sort of all of the little humorous moments that are in the film, really, which is this weird collision of the ancient and the modern and the secular and the spiritual. So there were lots of those moments that we found. And then there's a homily that Rafe's character gives about a third of the way into the film, where he talks about the importance of doubt. Mm-hmm. And that was really the moment that I thought, oh, I want to do this.
Yeah, the doubt speech, which is not it's in the trailer, so that's not really ruining anything. But that's a real highlight. And actually, for all 3 of you, that's kind of a key moment in the film, because that's when you really start to see inside Ralph Fiennes' head. So how did you sort of decide how you're going to serve the way that you let people into the minds of these men? Because there's a lot of characters in the film, and you're sort of drawing your focus from one to the next, and you're never confused, really, between all of them. So that juggling act, how did the 3 of you approach that and sort of keep it clear in the viewer's head, all of these different strands?
For me, the key to it was actually keeping it centered on Ralph Fiennes, Cardinal Lawrence's character, and seeing everything through his point of view. That was... And, you know, he gives you the opportunities to take you to other characters and to see what they're seeing. So it was always about staying in his point of view as much as we could. That would, you know, help, I guess, anchor us, you know, in terms of being able to shift between the other characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, with the music, it's I try to be as reduced as possible, because I have the feeling when music is reduced to, let's say, a handful of themes, then it's much better, because you always know where you are in a way. And what I try to do is I try to use music not in the sense that it's connected to a character.
Mm-hmm.
I rather used it more for let's say, for a state of mind, or for, let's say, the tension in the room. So there's maybe a tension moment or tension music for it, but there's also like a religious theme, maybe. And I think that helps maybe also to orientate in the movie quite well.
Yeah, the music struck me as being very sort of spiritual in an interesting way. When you get to the end of the film, you realize it's kind of sneaks up on you a little bit. Mm-hmm. In that last scene, which is different because you and the director Edward Berger also worked on All Quiet on the Western Front, which you already won Oscar for. So,
yes.
But that score is I was just talking to someone. I said that music almost kind of gives you a heart attack when it starts.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I can imagine. Whereas this is much more subtle, and again, it's something that's almost like just whispering to you in a way. It's very different.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's wonderful when you work with a director who has a sensibility for music, and he loves using music. At the same time, he loves using silence. And that's, for me, even though it sounds maybe a little bit weird as a musician, but pauses and silence are so important, so that every now and then when the music comes in, you really feel it. If there's no silence, you have no comparison, or the dynamic range of music is not as big as if we have moments like, for example, the speech. There was never music it was so clear that the speech has to be the speech.
I was just going to say, we actually did the same with the picture in a way, that trying to create that dynamic range between periods that were sort of a bit slower in terms of the cutting pace, and then areas that are more intense and more jarring, I suppose. So again, it's just creating the dynamic range for these characters to occupy, the space for them to occupy.
Yeah. Well, since you brought up the trending line, but I think I know I was sort of surprised. I had actually read the book, and I was surprised how much of the humor came through in the film. There's a lot of humor, and then there's a lot of suspense. It kind of plays like a murder mystery, even though there's no murder, obviously. But the balance between the tension and the humor and the emotion at the end, it's tricky. So could you just sort of address, actually, I guess all three of you, how did you get that balance right? Because there's so many ways you could have taken the book and gone in a different way.
I mean, that sort of felt like the job, to be honest, because adaptation's different every time with every book, and some books you need to be broken down and then rebuilt. Conclave sort of fell naturally into film shape. So the job was really about balancing. We inherited two ambitions, I think, from the book. One was to be about something, that was quite serious, and the other one was to be entertaining. And so it was always about doing this quite fine work of making sure we were trying to balance those two sides of the film, trying to work out when we need to add a little more thriller, and when we needed to focus a little more on the drama.
And so, as an editor, how did you tackle that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's you go through the process of working through the film, and you obviously have to assess it on every viewing, whether you think, oh, there's maybe a little too much humor here, or it's the wrong place. So it's all about modulation, and when you're lucky enough to have a director who's so skilled in these amazing performances, you have the ability as an editor to modulate and slightly dial things down if you think it's too much, or maybe you might even take a little bit out and save it for later. So it's it's a constant process of assessment. But there's one moment in the beginning of the film, which sort of gives, I guess, you talk about giving the audience permission to have a laugh, which then sort of prepares that you can have further laughs throughout the film. So.
Yeah, I think the same applies to the music in the sense that you have to really fine-tune, very subtly find the right tone. If you move too much towards thriller, then suddenly I think the irony is not landing as it does right now. And I think, from the humor, I think music is not supporting that in the sense that I'm being funny with the music. I think it was so funny already that that didn't need any music in those areas. But if you then go dynamically too strong on one or the other aspects of the film, it can actually destroy the humor. So you have to be very sensitive with it.
There's a sequence in the film that jumped out at me. Again, I'm not going to remember. There's a long sequence where a character is breaking into a room that they shouldn't be in, and it's not really treated like a thriller scene. It doesn't have it's not scored like that or cut like that or even written like that. But you realize you're about 5 minutes into the scene, you realize your toes are kind of like clenched up anyway. So how did you decide to make that choice with that scene? Because it's very underhanded the way that it was done in the film.
Well, that was one that we added, or there were elements of that that we added, the fact that there was someone else there and they might be caught there. And that was just one of those moments where we thought, well, this is a little, it's not, the whole film isn't like this, but this is a little thriller section within the film, so let's just dial it up a little bit. Yeah. So we added that. But then also it gave it a kind of quite odd, there's a nice, you'll see, there's a nice sort of silent exchange that happens, which I really liked and is quite odd.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that sequence in particular, it was, I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but it was, that experience that you describe of, the toes curling or just the tension, and it was, I guess, it was about setting it up right in terms of the picture so that you sort of buy yourself a bit of capital so that you can let that play out quite slowly and sort of enjoy the tension of it. So we did some things with the picture immediately preceding that just hopefully gives the audience a little jolt and unsettles them so that they're, primed, I suppose, to be tense for a few minutes.
Now, the cast in this film, as you are aware, is just remarkable. Obviously, Ralph Fiennes and Elisabeth Rossellini are nominated for their work, but across the board, John Lithgow, Stanley Tucci. I mean, it's an incredible cast. So, you obviously came in at the very beginning of the process, and you were there, for the back part of it for post. So, was there anything in the performances that sort of struck you or surprised you along the way? Like, how did you react to the casting and the way that they chose to interpret their parts?
Well, I mean, I was very lucky that I got to see the performances every day in the dailies, and I just couldn't believe it. How lucky am I to be working with all these wonderful actors. I mean, I guess the thing that sort of didn't surprise me, but was sort of I was in awe of, was just watching Rafe and just the truthfulness of it, and just how you could see him. That's what he aspired to, was just to be truthful in every moment, even when he was. The camera was on Stanley, and Rafe was behind, still acting, not just feeding lines to another actor, he just the incredible commitment. But yeah, I mean, what an incredible joy to have these performances to work with,
Yeah, and I mean, for the musician, if the film is already filmed very well and the acting is fantastic, in a way, I always think, it's so good, it doesn't need music, in the first place, And I think then it's much not easier, but it's a different perspective, because then you have to find the areas where music really makes sense, and you don't just smear it on top of it just to make sure that you are existing. It's important that that then you find the right spots where the music can have also an own role in a way. And with Edward's films, I mean, I've done now 5 with him, and every time I saw them, I was just like, I want to see it again, even though it was not finished. And that's wonderful if you have the chance to work with such talented people. That's wonderful.
And from a writing standpoint, I mean, obviously these were characters that you at first encountered on the page, and so to sort of see it come to life, through these actors' voices, was this, compared to other adaptations you've done, like what was it like for you sort of seeing it actually spring to life on film through these actors?
I do like an ensemble cast, and I love a dialogue scene that's sort of 3-4 characters, so there were lots of moments in the film that I could really sit back and enjoy. And then the other thing is, with really good actors, it's a little bit like Volker said. You realize, I don't need lines here, so you start taking them out. It's a process of trimming down with someone like Rafe, because that sort of scaffolding that you'd put up to support the scene, you realize you can do without a lot of it, because he's so good at getting over the internal.
And something interesting about this is that there really isn't a villain per se in the film. Like, you can understand the perspective of everyone in the movie. Obviously, John Lithgow is the closest to being what you'd call a bad guy, but he still lays out his rationale in a very logical manner. So as a writer, is it careful, you had to sort of make sure that all these points of view were clear, and then you never really sort of, as an editor and a composer, you never tell people, this person is good or bad. It's like you leave enough breathing room for the viewer to make up their mind.
Yes, absolutely. And, to some again, it was this funny thing about playing half drama, half thriller, and it was almost half whodunit as well. So you wanted to have a little bit of that fun, you wanted to have a little bit of that sense of the audience trying to work out, is there a villain here and who is that? But never overplay that, because we wanted to always be able to bring the character, back in from the cold, as it were. Somebody described the book as being a kind book, and I think it is, and I think we wanted that as well, that nobody is cast out forever. They're all flawed. All of the characters are flawed, but they're all forgiven as well by the end.
Now, I know you did quite a bit of research. I know you visited the Vatican when you were working on the script. Did any of you, have you gotten any feedback from from Rome, or from just Catholics in general? Like, what kind of response have you gotten to the film?
Some white smoke came out.
I haven't heard anything, so yeah.
I was told that the Pope was going to watch it.
Oh.
I don't know how they knew that, but I was told that, but that we haven't heard anything more.
Will you get a review, though?
In the Vatican Weekly. Yeah.
I mean, it is interesting that I think no matter what your faith or what your personal beliefs are, that this is a film that's very accessible, that even if you know nothing about Catholicism or the process, I mean, even most Catholics probably have no idea how this works. Just the minutiae of, like, even just how they do their meals together, I thought was fascinating. You know, that it's very communal, like, you know, at the end of every day. So how much of that was drawn experience, and how did you decide to focus so much on just those little tiny, just domestic aspects that I think might not have been in there?
I think actually that it's really wonderful that in a way under the story in the Vatican, it's quite a human story. I mean, that you can transfer that story on all sorts of different sceneries in a way, and I think that maybe makes the film very touching, because in the end a lot of human aspects of like human behavior, you know, of things that are not ideal in a way, because obviously we're dealing with an ideal world, religious world that wants to be approached, but it's not approachable in a way, you know. So, and I think after the film, you always feel like you want to go afterwards in a pub and discuss with people about it, with friends, about the topics that were touched, and I think that's. For me, a wonderful aspect of filmmaking. I think that's how I grew up when I was a kid. We went to a film, and afterwards we didn't went into the pub, but we, you know, we were standing afterwards in front of the cinema and we were talking about it. Have you seen that? And what did he say? And you know, this was great. And so there was a long resonance in after the movie. And I think I always feel when that is happening to me, I think it's good things are achieved.
And just to speak to your point about, you know, the detail of it and the, you know, the canteens and things like that. I mean, that was something that Edward, I think, wanted to really use to highlight the humanity of the people, that they are, you know, they do these, you know, really interesting jobs, and they work in this, you know, big institution, but you see they're all human. They have iPads and they have phones and things like that. So it's, you know, that sort of reflects the humanity of it, and as to what Peter was saying, that they're all flawed and, yeah, individual people with choices.
And the fact that, I mean, probably 95% of the film takes place in basically one location. It's a huge location, but, you know, it's almost what they would call like a bottle play, where it's like they're all shoved into one space, but it never feels like a stagey or a play. I mean, the way that all of you found ways to sort of expand it, so you're always just kind of intrigued that you never quite know what's going to happen next, you know, that it's very suspenseful day to day to day as this vote is going on. How did you sort of make that so cinematic?
I mean, you're right, there was a danger that it could become a very theatrical film, because, you know, there are essentially sort of 6 main characters. It takes place, as you say, in, you know, fairly limited location. I mean, I think one of the things we did was to start to think, you know, I was brought up Catholic, and the Catholic Church is very theatrical. You know, it knows how to stage a mass. And that's one of its strengths, I think, you know, its understanding of ritual and sort of pomp. And so one of the things we wanted to do was sort of lean into that aspect of it. And it started, in the end, I thought about it in 2 ways, that there was the stage area where things were performative and were, you know, for the public consumption. And then there were the wings where the sort of the horse trading was going on, and where, you know, the masks came off and people were revealed for who they really were. And that there's a point in the film, which I won't say, but it takes place in a canteen. And that's kind of when backstage and front stage explode together, and there can be no more lies. So in a way, I thought about it as theatre.
Well, and as an editor, in a way, it's like as the voting is going on, it's almost like you're putting a spotlight on different people as the power is sort of shifting around.
Yep. Yeah, and we were also, I mean, with those sequences, we wanted to be very careful that we sort of never repeated ourselves. So Edward is super prepared, so he, you know, had shortlisted and storyboarded those sequences in particular, and yeah, we paid great attention to making sure that every time you saw one of those ballot sequences, they felt a little bit different. And obviously, we, you know, in terms of the tension and the pace, we paid a huge amount of attention of that as well, just to try and make it. Yeah, we were very aware that it's people talking and in one contained space, but we need it to be like a thriller and be entertaining. So,
Well, we are out of time, so I just want to say thank you again so much for coming out.
Thank you.
Congratulations on this wonderful film.
Thank you.
I hope you all enjoy it very, very much.
Thank you very much.